Marcus Whitfield had built an empire by the age of 42, but he couldn't remember the last time he'd felt anything resembling genuine human connection. His penthouse office overlooked downtown Chicago, glass and steel stretching in every direction, a monument to success that felt increasingly hollow. He'd agreed to the blind date only because his college roommate David had been relentless, insisting that Marcus needed to get out of his own head, to remember what it felt like to be around people who weren't employees or business associates. The reservation was at Aurelio's, one of those restaurants where a single meal cost more than most people earned in a week. Marcus arrived exactly on time, wearing a custom suit that had been tailored in Milan, and took his seat at the corner table David had arranged. He ordered sparkling water and checked his watch. The woman David had set him up with, someone named Victoria from his wife's book club, was already 10 minutes late. Marcus was contemplating leaving when he noticed her across the room. She wasn't Victoria. She was a server, moving between tables with practiced efficiency. Her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, her uniform pressed but clearly worn from repeated washing. There was something about the way she carried herself, a quiet dignity that seemed at odds with the chaos of the dinner rush, that made Marcus pause. She approached an elderly couple, 3 tables over, and Marcus watched as she patiently repeated the specials, speaking slowly and clearly for the man who was obviously hard of hearing. She smiled at something the woman said, a real smile that reached her eyes, and Marcus felt something shift in his chest. It had been so long since he'd seen someone express genuine warmth to a stranger. She disappeared into the kitchen, and Marcus forced his attention back to the entrance, where Victoria would presumably arrive at some point. But when the server emerged again, carrying a tray laden with dishes, he found himself watching her once more. She moved with the kind of grace that came from years of practice, never fumbling, never losing her composure even when the kitchen doors swung open behind her and another server nearly collided with her back. That's when it happened. A businessman at a nearby table, already red-faced from too much wine, reached out as she passed and grabbed her wrist. Marcus couldn't hear what the man said, but he saw the server's expression change, saw the careful neutrality replace the warmth, saw her try to pull away while maintaining her professional demeanor. The drunk businessman didn't let go. Marcus was on his feet before he'd made a conscious decision to move. He crossed the dining room in a few long strides and placed himself between the server and the businessman, his presence alone enough to make the man release her wrist. "Excuse me," Marcus said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I believe the lady would like you to let go." The businessman blinked up at him, confused and belligerent. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who doesn't appreciate watching people be harassed," Marcus replied evenly. The server had stepped back, her hand rubbing the spot where the man had gripped her. Marcus turned to her, his expression softening. "Are you all right?" She nodded quickly, clearly embarrassed by the attention. "I'm fine, thank you. I can handle it." "I'm sure you can," Marcus said quietly. "But you shouldn't have to." The restaurant manager appeared then, apologizing profusely to Marcus while simultaneously ushering the drunk businessman toward the exit. The other diners had returned to their meals, the brief disruption already forgotten. The server met Marcus's eyes for just a moment, and he saw something there that made his chest tighten again. Not gratitude exactly, but a kind of weary recognition, as if she'd seen this scene play out too many times before. "Thank you," she said simply, and then she was gone, returning to her station near the kitchen. Marcus returned to his table, his heart beating faster than it had during most of his business negotiations. He sat down and realized he didn't know her name, didn't know anything about her except that she'd handled an ugly situation with more grace than most people he knew would have managed. Victoria arrived 20 minutes later, breathless with apologies about traffic, and Marcus went through the motions of polite conversation. She was attractive, articulate, clearly intelligent, everything David had promised. But Marcus found his attention drifting across the restaurant, following the server as she moved from table to table, her smile never quite reaching her eyes the way it had with the elderly couple. When Victoria excused herself to take a phone call, Marcus caught the server's eye and gestured her over. She approached cautiously, probably wondering if he was going to complain about something. "I wanted to make sure you were really all right," Marcus said. That looked unpleasant. "It was," she admitted. "But it's not the first time, and it probably won't be the last. People get drunk, they forget their manners." She shrugged, a gesture that tried to convey indifference but didn't quite succeed. "I'm sorry you have to deal with that," Marcus said. She looked at him properly then, really looked at him, and he saw her taking in his expensive suit, his manicured hands, the watch that cost more than most cars. Her expression became carefully neutral again, that same professional mask sliding back into place. "It's just part of the job," she said. "Was there something you needed?" "Your name," Marcus said, surprising himself. She blinked. "What?" "I realized I don't know your name," he said. "I'm Marcus." She hesitated, clearly uncertain about why this wealthy man at table 7 was asking for her name. "Sarah," she said finally. "Sarah Chen." "It's nice to meet you, Sarah," Marcus said. Despite the circumstances, she gave him a small, genuine smile then. "Nice to meet you too, Marcus." Victoria returned from her phone call, and Sarah excused herself, returning to her work. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur. Marcus barely tasted his food, barely registered Victoria's stories about her recent trip to Paris. He was watching Sarah move through the restaurant, watching the way she interacted with different customers, the way she managed to make even the most demanding diners feel attended to without losing her own composure. When the check came, Marcus added a tip that was larger than the meal itself, but he folded the receipt carefully so Victoria wouldn't see the amount. He didn't want to explain why he was leaving $500 for a server he'd barely spoken to. Outside the restaurant, Victoria touched his arm. "That was nice," she said. "Maybe we could do it again sometime." Marcus smiled politely and said something non-committal about checking his schedule. He knew he wouldn't call her, couldn't call her, because all he could think about was the woman inside who'd served their meal with quiet dignity, who'd handled harassment with grace, who'd looked at him with eyes that held stories he suddenly, desperately wanted to understand. He stood on the sidewalk for a long time after Victoria's car pulled away, looking back at the restaurant's glowing windows. This was insane, he told himself. He didn't know this woman, didn't know anything about her life, her circumstances, her dreams. She probably thought he was just another wealthy customer, someone passing through her world without really seeing her. But he had seen her. And somehow, in the space of a single evening, Sarah Chen had become the most real thing in Marcus Whitfield's carefully constructed life. He made a decision then, standing there in the Chicago night. He would come back. Not tomorrow. That would be too obvious. Too strange. But soon. He would come back, and he would find a way to talk to her. Really talk to her. Beyond the brief exchange they'd shared. He didn't know what he hoped to find, didn't know if she would even remember him. But for the first time in years, Marcus Whitfield felt something other than the hollow satisfaction of another successful deal. He felt curious. He felt alive. And he felt terrified in a way that had nothing to do with boardrooms or hostile takeovers and everything to do with the possibility that this woman, this stranger who served meals to people who barely saw her, might somehow change everything he thought he knew about what mattered. Sarah Chen counted her tips in the employee break room after her shift ended, her fingers moving automatically through the familiar ritual. $237 for the night, which was good, better than average. She separated out what she needed for tomorrow's bus fare and her daughter's lunch money, then folded the rest carefully into her wallet. The $500 tip from table 7 sat separately, and she still wasn't sure what to do about it. It felt wrong somehow, like charity disguised as gratitude. She'd seen the way that man Marcus had looked at her, not with pity exactly, but with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. Rich men didn't leave tips like that without expecting something in return, even if they didn't realize it themselves. She should probably give it back, she thought. But then she pictured the stack of past due medical bills on her kitchen counter, reminders of her daughter Emma's emergency room visit last month when her asthma had flared up badly. $500 would make a significant dent in what she owed. Sarah closed her eyes and made a decision. She would keep the money, but she would never work table 7 again if she could help it. She didn't need complications, didn't need some wealthy man's attention disrupting the careful balance she'd managed to maintain. Her life was hard enough without adding that particular variable. 3 days later, Marcus returned to Aurelio's. He came alone this time, during the lunch shift, and specifically requested Sarah's section. She recognized him immediately and felt her stomach tighten with a mixture of anxiety and something else she didn't want to examine too closely. He was dressed more casually today, though his watch and shoes still marked him as someone from a different world. She approached his table with her professional smile firmly in place. "Welcome back," she said. "What can I get you today?" "Just coffee," Marcus said, "and a few minutes of your time if you're not too busy." Sarah glanced around the half-empty dining room. Her manager was watching from near the kitchen, probably wondering why the customer at table 12 was trying to have a conversation instead of ordering food. "I'm working," she said carefully. "I can't really chat." "I understand," Marcus said, "but I wanted to return something to you." He pulled out an envelope and set it on the table between them. Sarah stared at it, confused. "What is that?" "The tip I left the other night," Marcus said. "It was too much. I shouldn't have assumed." Sarah felt something sharp and painful twist in her chest. She'd been right. He was taking it back. Of course he was. People like him didn't just give away that kind of money to people like her without strings. "I haven't spent it yet," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "I can get it from my locker." Marcus looked startled. "No, you misunderstand. The envelope isn't the money I gave you. It's another $500, because I realized after I left that night that what I really wanted wasn't to give you a big tip. What I wanted was to help, and a tip felt like the wrong way to do that. Patronizing." Sarah took a step back, her professional mask cracking. "I don't need your help," she said quietly. "I'm doing fine." "Are you?" Marcus asked gently. "Because I've been thinking about you for 3 days, Sarah. Thinking about the way you handled that drunk customer with such grace. Thinking about the way you treat every person who walks through that door like they matter, even when they probably don't deserve it. And I keep wondering what your life is like outside this restaurant. Whether you're really fine or whether you're just incredibly good at pretending." Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes and blinked them back fiercely. "You don't know anything about me," she said. "You're right," Marcus admitted. "I don't. But I'd like to. Not because I feel sorry for you, because I think you're the most genuine person I've met in years, and I've been surrounded by people who want things from me for so long that I forgot what it feels like to meet someone who doesn't." Sarah looked at the envelope on the table, then back at Marcus. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "The truth this time." "I want to take you to dinner," Marcus said. "Somewhere you don't have to work. Somewhere we can talk like two normal people. And if at the end of that dinner you tell me to leave you alone, I will. But I'm asking for a chance to know you, Sarah. Not as your customer, as someone who sees you." Sarah's manager was definitely watching now, probably wondering if she needed to intervene. Sarah knew she should say no. Should take the envelope, thank him politely, and go back to her careful, controlled life. But when was the last time someone had really seen her, had looked past the uniform and the professional smile to the person underneath. When was the last time she'd felt like anything other than a collection of responsibilities and survival strategies? "Tomorrow night," she heard herself say. "I have tomorrow night off." Marcus's face transformed, and Sarah realized she'd never seen him actually smile before. His whole demeanor changed, became younger, more open. "Tomorrow night is perfect," he said. "Can I pick you up?" Sarah thought of her tiny apartment in a neighborhood Marcus probably only knew from news reports about crime rates. "I'll meet you," she said. "Just tell me where." They exchanged phone numbers, and Sarah walked away from his table feeling like she'd just made either the best or worst decision of her life. That night, she lay awake, long after her daughter Emma had fallen asleep, staring at the ceiling and wondering what she was doing. Marcus Whitfield had looked him up online after her shift ended, had seen the Forbes articles and the photos from charity galas. He was worth more money than she could properly comprehend. He lived in a world where her annual salary probably wouldn't cover his monthly expenses. What could they possibly have to say to each other over dinner? But then she remembered the way he'd looked at her in the restaurant. Not with the glazed indifference of most customers or the predatory interest of men like the drunk businessman. He'd looked at her like she was a person worth knowing, like her thoughts and experiences might actually matter. The next evening, Sarah told Emma she had to work a late shift and asked their neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, to watch her. She felt guilty about the lie, but she wasn't ready to explain to her 8-year-old daughter why she was going out to dinner with a stranger. She met Marcus at a small Italian place in a neighborhood between their two worlds, neither wealthy nor struggling, just comfortably middle class. He was already there when she arrived, standing outside, looking nervous in a way that made him seem more human. "You came," he said, and she could hear genuine relief in his voice. "I said I would," Sarah replied. She'd worn her nicest dress, the one she saved for parent-teacher conferences and job interviews, and she saw Marcus notice it, saw appreciation in his eyes that felt different from the way men usually looked at her at the restaurant, over pasta and wine that Marcus insisted on ordering but that Sarah only sipped cautiously. They talked. Really talked. Marcus asked about her life and actually listened to the answers. Sarah found herself telling him about Emma, about the asthma that had gotten worse over the past year, about the medical bills she was still paying off in careful installments, about her dreams of going back to school someday to finish the accounting degree she'd abandoned when she got pregnant. Marcus shared things too, carefully at first, then more openly. He talked about the loneliness of success, about how every relationship in his life felt transactional, about losing his wife to cancer 5 years ago and throwing himself into work because it was easier than facing the emptiness of his home, about realizing recently that he'd built an empire but forgotten how to build a life. "I don't know why I'm telling you this," Marcus said at one point, shaking his head. "I barely know you." "Maybe that's why," Sarah suggested gently, "because I'm not part of your world. I don't want anything from you except this conversation." They stayed until the restaurant closed, talking until Sarah realized with shock that 3 hours had passed. When Marcus walked her to her car, an old Honda that coughed when she started it, he didn't comment on the contrast between their vehicles. He just asked if he could see her again. Sarah hesitated. "This can't be anything serious," she said finally. "You know that, right? We're from completely different worlds." "I don't care about that," Marcus said. "Do you?" Sarah thought about Emma, about the careful life she'd built for them, about how one wrong choice could destabilize everything. "Yes," she admitted, "I do care, because people from your world don't stay interested in people from mine. Not really. Not when the novelty wears off." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "What if I proved you wrong?" he asked. "How?" Sarah asked. "Time," Marcus said simply. Let me be part of your life, Sarah, not trying to fix it or change it or rescue you, just being in it, getting to know you and Emma, showing up, being consistent. And if after 6 months you still think this is just novelty for me, then I'll walk away. 6 months, Sarah repeated. That's a long time. It's not long enough, Marcus said, but it's a start. Sarah looked at him standing there in the parking lot, this impossibly wealthy man asking permission to be part of her ordinary life. Everything logical told her to say no, to protect herself and Emma from the inevitable disappointment. But something else, something deeper, told her that Marcus Whitfield meant what he said, that he was as lonely as she was, just in a different way, and that maybe, just maybe, they could help each other remember what it felt like to be seen. Okay, she said, 6 months. But no dramatic gestures, no trying to solve all my problems with money. If you're going to be in my life, you're in it as Marcus, not as a checkbook. Deal, Marcus said, and he held out his hand. Sarah shook it, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers, and something shifted between them. A promise. Or maybe just a possibility. 6 months later, Marcus sat on the floor of Sarah's small apartment, helping Emma with her math homework while Sarah finished making dinner in the kitchen. He'd learned to navigate the neighborhood, to chat with Mrs. Rodriguez about her grandchildren, to shop at the corner store where Sarah bought groceries. He'd been there for Emma's asthma attacks, sitting in emergency room waiting areas and learning to recognize the early warning signs. He'd met Sarah's co-workers and her small circle of friends, had shown up to Emma's school play and Sarah's parent-teacher conferences. He'd kept his promise, no dramatic gestures, no solving problems with money unless Sarah explicitly asked for help. Just presence, just showing up, just being Marcus, not a CEO or a billionaire, but a man learning how to be part of a life that had nothing to do with board meetings and profit margins. Sarah stood in the kitchen doorway, watching Marcus patiently explain fractions to her daughter, and felt something she'd thought she'd never feel again. Hope. Not the desperate hope of someone drowning and grasping for rescue, but the steady hope of someone who'd found solid ground. Marcus looked up and caught her eye, smiled that smile that had become so familiar, and Sarah smiled back. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. It was real. Two people from different worlds learning to build a bridge between them, one ordinary day at a time. And somehow, that was enough.